of the orphan or the widow. And I think that there's, in a responsible democracy, there has to be debate and there has to be accountability, and there hasn't been. The president has accepted responsibility, as he should, but it says there's going to be an investigation. We don't know what it's about. And I think there are serious questions about whether, in fact, with hundreds of civilian deaths acknowledged over the use of drones, that whether, in fact, it has been an incredible recruitment device and for ISIS. And for Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, but I would say, what are their alternatives? There seems to me there are four alternatives. One, we don't do anything and we allow Al-Qaeda to have safe havens in Pakistan or Afghanistan. That seems to me hardly a great option. The second is we have bombing campaigns with conventional bombs. That seems to be much messier. The third is we send in special forces. And this is in Hollywood. You're not going to send in 6 people. You're going to send in hundreds of people. And they're scared and they're doing massive assaults. It seems to me you're going to have more casualties, or drones. It seems to me of these horrible options, drones is the least bad option.
I really do think that this comes back to we have not had a debate about what we are doing there and what we ought to be doing. If there is a commitment, a true commitment on the part of the nation, it isn't something that's just done like a video game. I mean, it's something that should involve the American people, not only in the debate, but in some sense of commitment as to what we're about. I mean, there has been no debate on this war. It's just sort of been turning it over to the president. And I think liberals have to acknowledge that under a liberal Democratic president, that the number of drone attacks has increased dramatically, and it would become reliant upon it. And we're resorted to it. I mean, it has become the default means of United States military engagement in a very, very difficult area.
Well, it certainly is at least a debate in the short term, and the president's saying today that that he is going to reevaluate and look at whether any changes can be made. But let me turn you to something else closer to home, but very much in the news this week, David, and that is the stories yesterday in your newspaper, the New York Times, and other news organizations about the Clinton Foundation, about money going to the foundation, about a uranium mining company, a Canadian company with donations. Again, the head of the company giving money to the foundation, and then that company needing an okay from the U.S. government for the Russians to buy controlling interests. What are we learning here about the Clinton Foundation and the charities they run?
Yeah, it's way more egregious than I expected. You know, I thought there were donations and people were giving money, but there are some people probably giving money for the noblest of reasons to the foundation. Some people not apparently giving money not for the noblest of reasons. And this uranium story, where there's a connection where the Secretary of State nominally sits on this government body which gives okays to mergers with national security implications, and then a company deeply involved in that kind of merger, giving lots of money in the opportune moment to the Clinton Foundation. According to my newspaper, the foundation not reporting it really adequately. That's reasonably stark. Now, the defense is she didn't know. She wasn't directly involved. Well, that's completely plausible. But the fact is, you're sitting on the Secretary of State, or you're Bill Clinton running the foundation, and somebody's giving you all this money and you know it has government implications, and that doesn't ring all sorts of alarm bells. Where's the self-protection there? Where's the self-censorship or the self-thing? No, this is not right. And so I'm sort of stunned by it. I'm surprised by it. And, you know, the paradox of it right now as far as Hillary Clinton's president or candidacy is people think she's a strong leader. But the latest Quinnipiac polls suggest they don't trust her. They don't think she's honest. They have these two thoughts in their minds at the same time. And it just seems with the Clinton family, there's going to be a lot of competence and a lot of great political talent and governmental talent, but you're going to have a run of low-level scandals throughout the whole deal.
Is that what you see?
Well, I think there's two separate memories that Democrats have of the Clinton years, the golden Clinton years, the lowest unemployment rate in the history of the country for African Americans and Latinos, lowest unemployment rate in 40 years among women, the first greatest surpluses in budget deficit, budget in the country's history, first balanced budget in 50 years. I mean, just rather remarkable. Then there's the transactional part of the Clinton administration, sort of the darker part, the major donations and renting out the Lincoln bedroom at the White House, the briefings in the map room of the White House for business people who contributed and meet their regulators. And worst of all, the Mark Rich pardon, where his wife, Denise, who has since, let it be noted, renounced her American citizenship and gone to tax haven, gave $201,000 to the Democratic Party, $450,000 to the Clinton Library, and $100,000 to Hillary Clinton's campaign. And in return, apparently, she got a pardon for her husband, the fugitive financier, who was really one of the sleaziest people on the planet.
Now, this is back at the end of Bill
This is the end
Clinton's
of the
presidency.
but this is what it evokes. This kind of the sense of the money and is their transactional politics. And I just think that it comes now at a time when you've got to be totally transparent and get it out there. Now amending their filings. But I think there's a sort of dispirited feeling among Democrats. There's enormous respect for her as a leader and her talents, but there's a question of, my goodness, are we going to have more of this?
What does it mean for her campaign?
Well, first, for the Democratic Party, it should mean, let's look around. Is this all we've got? Whether she's a strong candidate or not, you don't know what's going to happen. Second, it re-raises the email issue. Now it just, before she could have some plausible case that the emails were destroyed because they were nobody's business, but now each time you get another scandal, you think, oh, that's why she destroyed the emails, because she didn't want to hide this. And so it just brings that up again. And then there's, they raised a lot of money, and Bill Clinton gave a lot of speeches, and she gave a lot of speeches. It's very unlikely this is the last of the cases, this one uranium. And there's the book coming out in a few weeks, possibly detailing more of the cases. And so it'll just be a steady theme, a sub-theme of her campaign.
Let me just make one quick point, and that is Bill Clinton did get $500,000 for a speech. That's a lot of money in Russia. David goes for half of that. No, but
70%.
70%. But Ronald Reagan, when he left office in 1989, went to Japan and gave 2 speeches of 20 minutes each for $2 million. $2 million, which is $4 million in today's dollars, and $2 million contribution to the Reagan Library. The difference, Nancy Reagan wasn't Secretary of State. Nancy Reagan wasn't getting ready to run for President of the United States. I mean, George W. Bush has made a lot of money in speeches. But I mean, that's what makes it unseemly, and that's what makes Democrats nervous.
One of the arguments that the Clinton people are making, though, is it's disclosed, that they've disclosed everything, and if they haven't, they're going to get everything out there.
They've got to get everything. Does
that take any of the
Yes, I mean,
bad
transparency, I think at some point probably the president is going to have to, former President Clinton is going to have to do almost a grilling, I mean, explaining what the Clinton Foundation did, and, but I think it's a time for transparency, but it's also, a time for accountability here. And I think it's going to be, to their advantage, this is April of 2015. I mean, if it were Labor Day of 2016 and she were the nominee, this would really be a serious blow.
What about the transparency thing?
Yeah, I think it helps. But the thing they don't know is why people gave them the money. A lot of people were giving them millions of dollars. And some people did it probably because they believe in the foundation work, and they did it for beautiful reasons. A lot of people give money to these things and to presidential candidates because they want to be near the flame of power. They just want to be in the room. They can go home and say, oh, I chatted with Bill Clinton. But some people give it because they're imagining a quid pro quo. I doubt there's an actual quid pro quo. Mitt Romney said today it looked like bribery. I think there's no evidence of that. But you want to plant the seed. And you've got an issue before the government, and you think, well, this is how government works in a lot of other countries. It probably works a little like this in the U.S. too, and therefore I'm going to plant the seed of goodwill. I'll get in the room, and there's no quid pro quo, but it's not great. And so there are all these people giving them money for all different motives, some of them good and some of them pretty bad.
All right, Judy, just one quick thing. $93 million Sheldon Adelson and his wife gave to Republican candidates in 2020. And the Koch brothers are talking about raising $900 million. They aren't altruists. I mean, they have an agenda. And make no mistake about it. That's what we're talking about with the dimension of money now in our politics, which is very much in the saddle. And to Lindsey Graham and Hillary Clinton's credit, they're the only 2 people I know running and say we need a constitutional amendment to change it.
Yeah, I would just say quickly there's a difference between an ideological agenda, which seems to be legitimate, and a business deal that you want to get ratified.
Well, okay. No, I'm not questioning. I'd take the second. Quite frankly.
Interesting.
You take which?
I'd take a business deal rather than somebody who's making foreign policy for the United States.
All right, at less than a minute, I wanted to ask you about the Republican field. You've each got less than 30 seconds to tell me if you see anything settling out among the many Republicans who expressed.
The only thing I have seen this week is that Marco Rubio is shooting upward. He's now in the last 2 polls. He's in #1 place. And I think that's because we were kind to Jared. He's at 13 and 15.
Yeah.
So it's basically unformed. It's still sort of unformed. But we were kind to him, and he's shooting right up there.
Yeah, it was the
Cause and effect.
It was the Brooks boost. It was what it was. The Republican field right now is there's no leader. It's a leaders group, but they're all secretly praying that the Supreme Court will declare same-sex marriage legal nationwide so they can get away from the issue. This is a killer issue for them, and they'd love to be rescued by the John Roberts Supreme Court.
Well, on that note, we thank both of you on this Friday night in April. Mark Shields, David Brooks, thank you. On the NewsHour Online, automakers routinely destroy early car sketches for fear they'll fall into the wrong hands. But thanks to artists who smuggle their work out of the studios of Ford, Studebaker, Packard, and GM, some of these bootleg drawings from the 50s and 60s survive today. On our homepage, we have a photo gallery of some of these stunning designs from Detroit's golden era. That's at pbs.org/newshour. And a reminder about some upcoming programs from our PBS colleagues. Gwen Ifill is preparing for Washington Week, which airs later this evening. Here's a preview.
From Pakistan to the Gulf of Aden, from the Senate floor to the 2016 campaign trail, we'll take you on a tour from tragedy to triumph to potential political trade-off, with reporters covering the stories later tonight on Washington Week. Judy?
Then on Charlie Rose, Russell Crowe on his directorial debut in The Water Diviner. And on PBS NewsHour Weekend this Saturday, we look at how Israel's water technology could alter Middle East relations. Finally tonight, a correction. Last night, we shared an item about Shakespeare Day. We noted that the bard died on April 23rd, and that some people also believe he was born on that date. However, we got the birth year wrong. We should have said it was 451 years ago. Thanks to some careful listeners who brought it to our attention. We appreciate that, and we regret the error. And we'll be back right here on Monday with a preview of the upcoming Supreme Court arguments you just heard about over same-sex marriage. That's the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Judy Woodruff. Have a great weekend. Thank you, and good night.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by BNSF Railway. Carnegie Corporation of New York, supporting innovations in education, democratic engagement, and the advancement of international